With me in the studio is journalist and former CNN anchor Nina dos Santos and the BBC's chief international correspondent Lise Doucet. I suppose we could say, Lise, that it's a relatively young country, Slovakia, but in the recent years it has certainly taken a veer to the right in terms of its politics.
Well, even Robert Fico himself, whose populist party began on the left, and then over the past 3 decades it has veered to the right. His election last year, which was met by protests by more liberal pro-EU groups, was with him within a Eurosceptic coalition, and month after month have seen the kind of policies that he campaigned on, saying there would be no military aid to Ukraine, although he later relented partly by allowing private companies, private military firms to provide some military support, calling for an end to sanctions against Russia. And this shocking, it seems clear it was an assassination attempt, came in the midst of protests. In fact, a protest has been called off against his new broadcast law, which would mean abolishing the Slovak Broadcasting Corporation, turning it into a more pliant media to support the state, very much an echo of Viktor Orban in Hungary. But no matter what the politics of those in Slovakia and across Europe, and as you say, just weeks before the election, this has sent a collective shockwave that, arguments are part of democracy, not assassination attempts. And just to see this happening, it's a reminder of what was needed about how not just deeply polarized, but dangerously polarized the political climate is, not just in Slovakia, but tonight it is Slovakia, but also the dangers of social media. And that was very much the emphasis at that press conference.
Yeah, we'll come back to some of that. Nina, if you were to look for a motive in this and you look back at his political history, you can look in many different directions.
That's right, he's a huge figure. He's been on the scene since the late 1990s when he founded Smer, but actually he entered politics pre-1989, pre the Velvet Revolution. As Lise was just saying before, on the left side of the spectrum, he was originally a communist. But he's been very nimble at capitalising on the populist headwinds that have become louder, particularly in this part of Europe, after countries like his joined the EU. He first became Prime Minister back in 2006. That was just a couple of years after Slovakia and other countries acceded to the EU. And he's been very adept at, on the one hand, talking a big game of anti-EU rhetoric, but taking the benefits of EU membership. A ditto with the relationship with the United States. You're now seeing this come into play. Over the last couple of years or so, he's obviously started saying that he's a skeptic on Ukraine. He doesn't want the EU to support Ukraine in the way it does. He actually wants Kyiv to capitulate and cede territory to Moscow so that the war eventually is over. And he's espoused a very hard anti-immigration stance as well. All of this has cleaved Slovakian society from one side to the next. And many people say this is the outcome of this populism.
So just so I can better understand him as a politician, is he a political chameleon in one sense? Has he changed because he sees which way the direction of the country is going, or has he been dragged that way out of necessity because he's had to go into coalition with the ultra-nationalists?
I think he was always very, very able to, read the room and capitalise on the political changes of the day. And he, for instance, take the 2008 bailout and Eurozone crisis. He was very, very able then to try and use his leverage to say during those EU summits, well, Germany and France, we want a seat at the table. We, Eastern European countries, the group of the so-called Visegrad 4 countries that includes Poland, Hungary, Czechia as well. He was a big voice around the table there, advocating for, a slightly more sovereign policy for them to have their own autonomy, but also to benefit from EU membership. And by the way, even though he talks a big game against the EU, against NATO, he still decided to take the euro in 2009, even at a time when the single currency was in crisis and some countries were getting bailed out. So he's very an animal of convenience, I would say.
But then I was just looking tonight at some of the reaction, and obviously the Interior Ministry is saying it is political, and they're calling for people to be calm and not to seek out retribution. But once the shock has dissipated, is there a risk that Slovakian society becomes more divided?
This is my first reflections on this very dangerous moment, was that you see that now on the internet, this public square, first of all, right across Europe saying that this is an attack against democracy. Everyone right across the political spectrum in Slovakia condemning this violence, this attack against the Prime Minister. But so quickly we've seen the sniping. It was on full view in that press conference. Yes, they called for calm, but they told the journalists in front, look at yourself in the mirror, the kind of media what you have been putting on social media, although some would say that what Fico and others around him were putting on social media and saying in public was, I mean, it's not the right time to really be discussing this, but that also created this no-holds-barred, vicious kind of political atmosphere. And Christian, when we got the breaking news, when I first went on social media and thought, oh my goodness, what is the motive? There was a whole slew of posts on social media saying it was because he refused to accept the WHO Global Pandemic Coalition. In other words, his policy criticizing the vaccine. He wanted to look into how Slovakia dealt with the COVID-19 pandemic. So those old conspiracies are threading through. So danger in the assassination, but danger in the reaction to the assassination. As we've said time and again, in disasters and crises like this, it's not the crises, it's how you respond to the crises. And this is in full flow right now, when the alarm lights are blinking.
Yeah, lot of information on social media about this 71-year-old man who is said to be the attacker. A lot of it we're trying to verify, and we'll try and bring you some of that as and when we've done that. Let me bring you some reaction, though, from the Russian President, Vladimir Putin. He sent a telegram to the outgoing Slovakian president. He described it as a monstrous crime. I know Robert Fico as a courageous and strong-minded man. He said, I very much hope these qualities help him survive this difficult situation. Please convey to him words of the most sincere support, as well as wishes for a speedy and complete recovery. Not